I'm going to show you how to solve a problem like this using counters like this. In this example, it says you're going to start off with two positives, and they want you to take away one negative. So just below, I'm going to draw two positives, and I'm going to take away a negative. That's what they want me to do, take away a negative. But when I look at the problem, I don't have any negatives to take away. So in that case, you have to remember, whenever you don't have enough counters, so I'm talking about these things, you're going to add zero pairs. That means if I'm trying to take away a negative, but I don't have that in my problem that I'm starting with, I'm going to introduce a zero pair like this. Because remember, a positive and negative, when you combine these, they cancel each other out. That's just really zero. That's why it's called a zero pair. So I can add as many of those as I want. But in this case, I'm just going to add one zero pair because that allows me to subtract a negative now. So I can take away this negative, and I can see that I have three positives left over. So my answer for this problem would be positive 3. So we just did the problem to take away negative 1. So we started with two positives, and we took away one negative, and we just found out that the answer is 3. All right, here's my next example. We're starting off with two positives, and we're adding one positive to it. So nothing cancels out here, no zero pairs, so 2 plus 1 is going to give me a total of 3 positives. In this next example, it says we're starting off with 4. So we're starting off with 4. I'll put that down here. And we're adding 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives. So we're adding 4 negatives to that. When you're adding, you look for any zero pairs, right? If I'm adding this with this, meaning I'm combining them together, anytime you have a positive and negative, when you combine those two, they cancel each other out. And you can see in this case, we have 4 zero pairs. Everything is gone. So the answer to this is just going to be 0. In this example, we're starting off with one negative, so negative 1, one negative, and they want you to subtract, so take away 1, 2, 3 positives. So I'm starting with a negative, and they want me to take away 3 positives. So if I were to think about a situation, I have one negative, I have to take away 3 positives. I don't have any positives to take away because, again, I'm starting with a negative. So that means I have to introduce a zero pair, and you can see now I have one positive, but I need 3 of them. So that means I'm going to add another zero pair and another zero pair. Because remember, all this is really 0. So we're still having our negative 1 that we're starting with. But by adding the zero pairs, now I can take away those 3 positives. So I take away these 3 positives, and I can see I have 4 negatives left. So that means negative 1 minus 3 is equal to negative 4. All right, in this next example, it says you're starting off with 2 negatives. So I'm starting off with negative 2, and I'm going to add 2 more negatives. So I'm going to add 2 more negatives here. So if I have 2 negatives and I add 2 negatives, you can see there are no zero pairs. So altogether, we have 4 negatives. So that's my answer. Negative 2 plus negative 2 is negative 4. In this next example, we're starting off with 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives. So I'm starting off with 4 negatives. They want me to add 1, 2 positives. So 4 negatives, I'm adding 2 positives. Since I'm adding, I'm just going to see, do we have any zero pairs? And we do have zero pairs because these are going to cancel each other out here. And you can see I'm left with 2 negatives. So negative 4 plus 2 is equal to negative 2. All right, in this example, you're starting off with a positive. So we're starting off with positive 1. And they want you to subtract a negative. So a negative 1, right? We only have one negative there. So positive 1 minus negative 1. So what's the answer? So I'm just going to do the work on the side. We're starting off with a positive. They want me to take away a negative. And when I look at this problem, I don't have any negatives, which means I got to add a zero pair so I can end up with a negative, which I do here. And now I can take away that negative, and I can see what I'm left with is 2 positives. So 1 minus negative 1 is positive 2. And then in my last example, you're starting off with 3 negatives. So 1, 2, 3 negatives, negative 3. We're subtracting 2 positives. So for this, I'm going to do the work on the side. So I'm going to do, or just below it, 3 negatives, right? Start with 3 negatives, and they want you to take away 2 positives. So when you look at your problem, you just ask yourself, do I have positives that I can take away here? Which in this case, I don't. So that means I'm going to add a zero pair. And now, again, we're trying to take away 2 positives. I only have 1 positive, which means I need to add another zero pair. So now, do I have enough positives to take away? They want me to take away 2 positives. I have 2 positives. So I get rid of those, take them away. And you can see now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives left over. So my answer, negative 3 minus 2, is equal to negative 5. So what we just did is we added and subtracted integers using counters.